Kia ora guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Shift Notes, our second episode for our second season. Thank you so much for following us and keeping up with it. We've got some pretty awesome guests with us this morning. It's a morning. So without further ado, Gareth O'Donnell.
All right, hey Gareth, how are you going? We're super stoked to have you on, to feature you on Shift Notes, probably like someone who's been quite pivotal to the Healthy Hospo journey. So it's about time we got you on here to chat, and so people can learn a little bit more about who you are, because if you're coming to a Healthy Hospo event, no doubt you'll meet Gareth. To give you a little bit of context and background on Gareth and why we've been working with him. So he is a wellness / fitness / sleep expert. And I was introduced to him, I don't know, 5 years ago now, because he used to run training sessions at the Lion Gym on Mondays and Fridays. And every single session would end up with everyone on the floor, just completely gassed. So really awesome introduction. And when as I got to know him a little bit better, and as we started to explore the Healthy Hospo idea, started to realize that Gareth was actually running similar holistic well-being programs for corporates. And he did this whole health upgrade that was basically 8 weeks where we looked at sleep, nutrition, exercise, fasting, water intake, everything you need to kind of holistically manage your health. And it very much aligned with all the pillars at Healthy Hospo. So it's kind of like, well, we need someone to help us run, an expert to run these programs. And Gareth has kind of already done it. So it's been an adventure since then. I'm sure you've had many interesting experiences getting involved in hospitality, and we'd love to hear some of your story today. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome, guys. Thank you very much. And congratulations on such a cool podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a really cool one. Hey.
Gareth has also started his own podcast recently, so feel free to plug if you need to.
Yeah, it's called Not
Awesome
Podcast. It's like the post. But yeah, no, I'm loving what you guys are doing. I'm loving what Healthy Hospo is about. It's really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, so Gareth has been mostly working with the corporate world, so it's kind of cool that we finally get to take everything that corporate gets and give it to an industry that, you know, arguably needs it and doesn't always have the resource to find that kind of to find health and well-being funding. So let's get to know you a little bit better. Let's introduce you to everyone. And first of all, let's talk about how you actually got into the fitness industry and what led you to initially get into personal training.
Okay, let's do the nutshell version, because it's a long story. But I was not always Mr. Fitness, for starters. In fact, I was a very a bit of a troubled youth, I guess you'd say. I wasn't exactly a perfect human being, but I was raised well, and I knew I had to make some changes in my life. So at 18 years of age, I joined the army, and I went down to woooohoo there and did my first 12 weeks of basic training. And what a shock! What a shock that was, a culture shock. But I learned something about myself. I learned that I was capable, more capable than I'd ever realized in my life before. I was quite a little kid. In fact, I joined the army at 56 kgs, just to give you context. I was 56,
oh my God.
56. The pack was as big as me. I was carrying 40 kilos of webbing in a rifle. So that just gives you context. So I had this kind of thing in my head that I wasn't man enough, I wasn't big enough, I wasn't this and that, you know, kind of inferiority complex. And it really held me back in school, held me back in a lot of different things. And fortunately, I made this decision. And in that 12 weeks just transformed me as a person. I watched people drop off left, right, and center. You know, we started with 186 recruits. And by the time we got to the inner basic training, I was like one of 98 left and one of the top ones. I was one of the fittest, one of the strongest, and that was transformative for me. And I remember the moment it happened, it was a cool moment. It was 10 weeks into basic training. We dug a hole in the ground. It was snowing in woooohoo. I'd basically never seen snow before. I'm sitting in this hole. It's 2:00 in the morning. We're doing sentry duty, which is like basically looking out for a fake enemy. So it's kind of like war games. And I sat there, I looked up at the sky, and for the first time in my life, I actually believed in myself. I said to myself, I'm 10 foot tall and bulletproof now. I'm unstoppable. And I'd never ever said those words to myself before. And I kind of just like wave, you know, when you're going to get that spinal shake where you're kind of like, oh my God, something just changed. And that was it. And so I committed from that point onwards to being a more disciplined individual. Self-respect was a big thing for me from that point onwards. And part of that was this idea around committing to having a regular exercise routine, expressing myself through movement. So movement became this way for me to express myself, more so than words. I was never really that good with words or academia, so movement became my modus of expression and communication, and I was good at it, right? So if you're good at something, you go for it. So then fast forward, I moved to East Timor, did a peacekeeping mission, and that was the first time as well that I really shifted my focus away from myself to other people. So when you're young, you know, 18, 19 years of age, you really are in your own head, well, I was. And when I got to East Timor, it was a real shock. I didn't realize people lived like that in the world. So we're talking like grass huts, very basic. Malaria was rife. They are literally waking up every day going, where am I going to get my next meal? That's all they're focused on. So it's survival mode, right? And so we got to go there, we got to build schools, fix the roads, and we got to do all this really cool stuff. And for the first time in my life, I actually gave back. And that really changed the way I thought about what I wanted to do and where I want to go. So knowing that I was passionate about movement, knowing that this made me feel really good giving back to people, I was like, okay, I think I want to get into a PE teaching, actually is where I started. I was like, I want to be a PE teacher. And I want to use movement to help people find themselves and have that same experience that I had. So went through that process, ended up not being a PE teacher, ended up moving into personal training. And that was a little bit of a shift away from where I wanted to go. But what I did find about that is that that industry at the time, and this is 2002, was full of other people like me. So the fitness industry was full of people that wanted to help people. In the early days, this is pre-Instagram, pre-Facebook, pre all of that kind of stuff, and so I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I got into it. I did it for a very long time. Did it for 15 years, and still dabble around it now. But then towards the end of my career in that space, it did change, and it has changed for the worse, unfortunately. And it's not because of the people; it's because of the industry and the commercialization of everything. But we'll dive into that later. So just to wrap up, I moved into corporate health. I finally found a thirst for education, like very late in my 30s. One of the things I struggled with as a kid is that I had ADD. In fact, I was supposed to be on Ritalin, but my dad wouldn't let them put me on it. So I'd go into a classroom and I couldn't focus for like more than 15 minutes. I'd gone. So I was just a class clown. I just joke with people. And funny enough, I got told I had a reading disability. And I got sent to a reading coach, and the reading coach said he doesn't have a reading disability. He just doesn't like reading. So they gave me a joke book because they knew I was a class clown. So the joke book I read cover to cover, word for word, and I knew all the jokes in it. And so there you go. So I really couldn't focus. But then, by the time I got to my 30s, you know, I changed a bit, and now I just have this real hunger for education. So I started learning more about nutrition, expanding out to holistic health, and then later on sleep and neurolinguistics. So I really have tried to capture the entire holistic space. And when I meet people now, I really do look at them from that perspective. And that's what I took into corporate health. And now, finally, I've got my dream job. I'm the chief of protocol for the Edison Clinic, where we get to combine genetic testing, blood work, and all the different proactive health pillars that I've learned about across my life. I get to pull it into one job. Oh. Sorry, that was long-winded, but
it's pretty awesome though. Like if you ever want to really geek out about anything well-being wise, Gareth is a great person to talk to, because he knows pretty much everything about everything. And it's been really interesting spending some time with you over the last couple of years and completely like opening horizons on, you know, what well-being is for different people. You kind of spoke a little bit about getting into more of a company or corporate health. What kind of made you shift into starting your own company to look after corporate health?
Yeah, so that was just an opportunity thing. So I was very fortunate. I had that job with Lion for a very long period of time, from 2005 till last year, essentially. Just really in the exercise space, but I was always dabbling. Like sometimes they'd give me nutrition seminars to run, sometimes they'd give me mobility seminars to run. And then I got other jobs with Chelsea Sugar Factory. I had jobs at Adidas, Coca-Cola. I had jobs like all the way through. I got these kind of real cool gigs outside of the gym space. And as I got towards the end of that career, and I started getting disillusioned by, you know, the advent of like Insta and Facebook, and the way the industry was kind of turning away from that wanting to help people to wanting to look good, I started to realize I needed to change. And so I looked into corporate health and actually saw some really positive things. Like in corporate health, they are quite advanced at introducing ideas. I just wouldn't say that they're good at implementing those ideas, but they are probably at the forefront of introducing new ideas into the workspace specifically. So I was like, okay, I want to be a part of this. What does this look like? Landed a huge contract first up with a company called Vision Stream, where they had 500 staff. And now all of a sudden I was the main health and wellbeing provider for 500 people. So I got to create a bespoke wellbeing solution for that particular company. And it was amazing. I basically had the reins myself. I could do whatever I wanted, and we could put the ideas forward to the leadership team, and the leadership team would literally just gobble them up. So because I was so successful off the bat, I was like, okay, I'm just going to extend on this, started working with other companies and really honing them down on what I wanted to do. And then got to do that for 5 years, got into health coaching. So really applying all those different pillars of health to individuals, depending on whether or not if we're doing something specific, like if you're just focusing on one pillar, or if you want to do something holistic and go after all the pillars. And then unfortunately, COVID just took me up. So I had to find a new job at the end of last year, but had 5 years in that space with WellMe, which was my other business, and absolutely loved every minute of it. But, you know, corporate can be challenging though. There's politics and hierarchy, and there's stuff that you have to try to overcome. But if you're smart, you can overcome it. But it wasn't that easy, to be honest. It got harder as the time went on, actually, especially as COVID arrived, it became almost impossible.
Yeah,
I feel like when people get used to it as well, they start to get slightly more demanding, and you know, things, you get used to things, so they're like, well, we need more of that or that, right?
Yeah, there is a bit of a behavior where they'll go with some organizations go with a checkbox. So they'll look to, if they're very health and safety orientated, they look to tick a box. If they are more liberal, let's say, they will be more open to trying different activities. But corporate really is about ROI. So if I invest $20,000 in this, what's my return on investment? If you can't prove that, you're not going to get very far.
And that's the hardest thing for us as well, I guess, within Healthy Hospice. We're trying to help people really invest in their staff and know that, you know, hey, it does pay to look after your staff. And it's sometimes hard to capture that in an exact dollar value, but the dividends of looking after your people and creating healthy, happier cultures really do pay off, which kind of leads me to talk to you about your alignment with Healthy Hospo. So this kind of started, for anyone who doesn't know the background, really this started with a chat. I guess when Tim and I and a couple of people at Line were chatting about bringing Healthy Hospo to New Zealand. I was going to your training session, Gareth, and I think I just mentioned to you one day after one of the workouts that, like, hey, there's this project going on, it could be cool to get your interest and get you involved. And ever since that chat, it's been a full-on journey, and you've been there from the start, and you've been helping us build content and bring all that work that you've put into corporate and start making it more accessible for hospitality, which is awesome, because as someone who now works in corporate, when I look around and I'm like, oh, we get all this cool health and well-being stuff, where was that in hospitality when I needed it? It's been really cool to work with you to share that knowledge and share that resource with Hospo. So what has it been like working with the hospitality industry through Healthy Hospo?
Okay, so I have to say that one of my favorite projects has been Healthy Hospo. I've got two, I'll call them social enterprises that I work with. I kind of consider Healthy Hospo a social enterprise. One of them is BBM, the Brown Butterbean, David Attelli, and I get to work with the morbidly obese out in South Auckland. And again, there's not a lot of money for that particular project, but these kind of projects where health and well-being is not present in any sort of decent level, I love to be a part of, because I'm a person that wants to create impact. I'm a person that wants to see change. And the only way to do that is collaborate with like-minded people. So, you know, that I've been very fortunate to land with yourself, Laurie, and Kat and Amy and the team, because it's impossible to do this alone. You know, I've seen people try to do it alone. Dave was one of them, actually, from BBM. Until he got a team around him, he couldn't expand out. So it's so important, and to build that around like-minded people is critical. So I found it really rewarding, because we finally get to make that impact, and satisfying because the feedback and the response from the people who have participated has been amazing. It's a very different crowd. It's not, I don't know what, I probably had a misconception around who I was going to be working with. It's young, it's vibrant, there's heaps of energy, and their dedication to things like the run club and stuff that we did, it's just been amazing. Like I've been blown away by hospitality New Zealand. I just want to do more of it now. I just want more people. I just want to expand it. So yeah, it's been cool. I've really, really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to continuing it.
Mikey was part of that run club as well, so there's a few run clubbers. Gee, we'll get you there one day.
One day.
But it's, yeah, honestly, so Coach She was literally coaching our run club that we did at the end of last year, and the results were incredible. Some of the ways that people changed their lives, the community that was built around it. That was probably one of definitely my biggest highlights of the Healthy Hospo journey. What has been your biggest highlight?
The reason why I like the run club so much is not to lean on exercise, but it's because I got to see something through. So I like to see outcomes. I'm an outcome and achievement driven kind of individual. So watching people go from the start and seeing them go to the end, and listening to all the things we had people giving up smoking. We had people going to bed earlier. It sounds trivial, but it's actually, it's a big change for some people. We had people changing their diet. Like it was just, that was really rewarding, because I think the other stuff that we'd done before that, because we had a tough year, right? We had a really tough year trying to deliver this thing and grow it during COVID digitally. And the key learning there was, right, that wasn't, the hospitality people don't like jumping on Zooms, full stop. They want their people, right? So that was the most enjoyable thing about that. But then actually finishing the year with the mental health seminar and the dinner, and seeing how 60 people showed up to that, it's just, we've got momentum now. And so that's, I could see that, in 2 or 3 years time, I could see that being 1,000 people in a hall somewhere, that's how cool that the level that we want to try and get to. So
yeah, cool. And then last question from me before I hand over, what would you say your basic philosophy around well-being is?
Yeah, this is a good one. So if you'd asked me 10, 20 years ago, I would have said sleep, eat, train, repeat, right? That would have been my kind of philosophy, very harsh, very kind of linear. These days, now I'm a father and being a business owner, failed at business, been successful at business. For me, it's now about continued growth. It's about being a lifelong learner, a sponge. And I won't have all the answers, but my drive now is to educate myself and put myself in situations where I have to grow and learn as often as I can. That's really the secret sauce for me. And that goes for anything I do, right? Like, I know quite a bit about exercise, but I don't know everything. And so, seeking out different challenges physically, seeking out different challenges mentally, going into different social settings. A friend of mine's a sociologist, and he is a massive advocate of free speech, but also likes to challenge himself. So he'll openly seek online trolls and bullies to have conversations with them. And I used to look at that and go, holy shit, how do you even manage that, negotiate that? But he does it just because he's trying to learn from them. So that's it. Be a lifelong learner, be a sponge.
Ooh.
That's it.
Yeah, man.
Amazing.
I think that's such an important thing to kind of take in hospitality as well, because like every day's a school day, right? Every single chance that you get, every shift, every person that you meet, you're learning something from them. And yeah, it's nice to be able to kind of share that same idea with you. I wanted to kind of like touch in on sort of like a topic about health in hospo, just kind of going off like a couple of things from our personal experiences, and probably what a lot of people are going through as well. One of the things that kind of really always pops in my head that some younger industry folk ask me is just like, if you're working a long shift, what are some like great snacks you'd kind of recommend to sustain us during the shift? Because I definitely know I've gone through 8 to 10 hours and realized like, holy shit, I've maybe had a mandarin or an orange today. Like what else should I be having?
Yeah, okay, so there's a couple, this is fraught with danger, this one. Okay, so if it's a night shift, okay, and this is important, if it's a night shift, you produce melatonin regardless. So I'm going to go biochemical with this, and then I'll come back to the food itself. Melatonin shuts down your insulin production. Now that's dangerous. So when you're eating through the night, you're only going to get put on body fat. So that's something to consider when you're working a night shift. Now, the way to avoid that would be to eat ketogenically. So ketogenically is it's a bit of a popular diet at the moment, but it's high fat, high protein. And the reason for that, it actually supports focus. So if you're going into a shift and you want to be really focused, you'd want to eat ketogenically throughout your night shift specifically. If you are doing, let's look at a different shift, like a double, for example, where you're doing a day and night, where you're splitting, that would be slightly different. So you need to consider, I need energy for a very long sustained amount of time. And then through the day shift, you would want to incorporate more carbohydrate. So that sustainable carbohydrates, that's below ground vegetables, grains, fruits, so that you can go for that double shift. And then a day shift should just be normal eating. So it's not as easy as snack on this, although I'll give you those. So here's my top 5 things that I would do if I was specifically working a night shift. I'd be embracing my creativity, especially I used to work behind a bar many years ago. So if you've got access to things like ginger, apple cider vinegar, cayenne pepper, tomato juice, I'd be looking at like doing little shots of these things to help me pick me up throughout the evening. Alkalize to energize simply means alkalizing your system will help with your health in general, but it helps you to focus as well. So green vegetables are one of your best sources of food for alkalinity. So green drinks, you can actually, if you work in a bar where there's that kind of solution, then that's perfect. If you have to make up your own one, that's a little bit annoying. Bulletproof coffee. Bulletproof coffee is a ketogenic coffee that you could take before your shift, but you don't want to take towards the end of the shift because it's going to mess you up for sleep. And then shakes, protein shakes. So pea protein, coconut milk, those kind of things. So anything that's high in protein, high in fat is going to be a good solution. So that would be your on-shift solution. Your pre-work solution should be more sustenance. So it should be quite a large meal, about 1 hour before you start. And that's where you have your starches. So that's where your below ground vegetables go, your proteins, so a wholesome meal. And it should be relatively large, about 1 to 2 hours before you start shift. And then when you get to your post shift, you want to consider, okay, it's time to recover. Okay, now you can use a hack here, something called a postprandial dip. Now the postprandial dip's when you eat carbohydrates, your insulin goes up. Insulin makes you feel tired. So if you're coming off a night shift and you want to put yourself to sleep, but you don't want to interfere with sleep, you want to stay away from heavy saturated fats. So this is where the burger and the fries are terrible, because they'll have an impact on your on the quality or the density of your sleep. So even though you may be asleep, the quality that you're getting is not going to be that great. So this is where you could have a muesli, oats, eggs on toast, that kind of thing, before you want to put yourself down after the night shift. And that's going to have an effect on making you feel sleepy. That's going to put you down for sleep. Then you can have your first big cycle. So thought about that one a wee bit. It's not as simple as just eat this, but there's key considerations here. So to summarize, ketogenic eating on shift for focus, carbohydrates towards the end of the shift, good carbohydrates to put you to sleep, and a big wholesome meal 1 hour before shift to get you through and give you that sustenance. You can go 5 days without eating. So it's like fasting is not a bad thing on a shift. However, if you've got like 5 or 6 shifts on the pot, it's going to catch up with you. So you need to make sure you are refueled.
I like that oats one.
Gareth,
I like the oats one.
For those of us, sorry. For those of us who don't know, what is bulletproof coffee?
Bulletproof coffee, it was invented by a guy named Dave Asprey, the bulletproof guy. He's a biohacker. He had the proper bulletproof or the hack bulletproof. So the proper bulletproof is duck fat, butter, and blended it with a long black, and it goes creamy. You want to duck that's in there, and that's the. So hold on. I'll give you my hack. My hack's coconut cream and butter, and you just have like a tablespoon of butter and about quarter of a cup of coconut cream with a long black. You blend it, and when it just fluffs up, and actually just tastes like a flat white. You hardly even know, but it's just high fat. The caffeine's obviously a nootropic, so it's going to help you with focus and energy at the start of the day. But what the fat does is the caffeine binds to the fat and then gets slowly released into your system. So instead of getting a whack, like a rev up, you get a slow release. So the caffeine slowly drip feeds your brain for about 4 to 5 hours.
So,
yeah,
storage of caffeine.
So that's a
So you're
good.
saying
I can just imagine the texture.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of wacky, but it's really effective. It does work. So
Really? Oh, sorry. Really quick question as well on the topic of caffeine. How long before sleep should you have your cup of coffee?
yeah, it's a tough one, because caffeine it's got a 12-hour half-life, and what that means is it stays in your system for 12 hours. It binds to something called your adenosine receptors. Your adenosine receptors is what makes you sleep. So adenosine pressure, when it builds up, makes you sleepy, and we want that, right, towards the end of our shift, so we can put ourselves down for a decent sleep. Caffeine binds to it and blocks melatonin from getting through as well. So you don't get sleep pressure, you don't stay asleep, you have a very grumpy sleep, even though your eyes may be closed. So we want to extend the period of time between when we have our caffeine and when we finish our shift to go to bed, as long as possible. So if you're starting a real late one, like, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night, you're in the bar, or 8 o'clock, and you're going to go through to 6 in the morning, you want to have that caffeine at the start, but you don't want to touch it again. And sometimes, it's hard to, if you're not adapted to working through the night, you're thinking about caffeine every 5 minutes to try and get you to the end, right? So that can be tough. And this is where those other shots like cayenne pepper, which is a stimulant, that could help you get through. Alkalizing your system creates clarity. Ginger, another stimulant. So these are stimulants that won't interfere with sleep. Yeah.
So cayenne pepper, you mentioned tomato juice earlier as well.
Yeah, that's just to mix it with something. So this is.
Were you saying Bloody Marys are okay any time
Yeah,
of day?
yeah. No, absolutely. Without the vodka,
Vinegar.
virgin. But yes, absolutely. I mean, if you've got that opportunity, right? If you're a chef or a bartender and you've got that opportunity to get access to this stuff, use it, man. Use it on yourself. Test out little things that you can potentially give people to nightcap rather than alcohol.
Like that V8 juice.
Yep, you could do that. V8 juice, chuck the cayenne pepper in there. That ginger and apple cider vinegar, man, that will blow your head off. That's a goodie.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks for that. What are some of the best ways to recover after like a post big shift, like big do's and don'ts? How would it kind of like unwind, you reckon?
Okay, so unwind, so let's talk about recovery, and I'll talk about worry. Well, so obviously sleep is vital. We need 5 cycles of sleep every 24 hours, which is 5 cycles of 90 minutes, 7.5 hours minimum. And what we learned very quickly, especially with the night shift guys, is that was really challenging for people to hit. So the way to maybe achieve that, this is a suggestion, not a prescription, but is to use a biphasic sleeping program, especially if you're working those heavy nights. So biphasic is sleeping twice. So the way I would work that is I would get home from my shift, I would have that big carbohydrate, that eggs on toast, use a postprandial dip, drive myself down into sleep for at least 4 cycles, so 6 hours. I'd wake up, do my morning routine, do my admin, go and exercise, have my lunch, and then put myself down again for 30 or 90 minutes in the afternoon. And that's how I would mitigate some of the damage of working through the night. Okay, we can't mitigate all of it because it is quite harmful, it's quite damaging on the system, but you could hit 90% of it just by using a biphasic sleeping pattern. So that's what I would do with sleep to maximize sleep yield. And what you'll also observe by doing that is you'll increase sleep density. So you'll get more delta wave sleep, which is the physical recovery. One of the things I've got down here as well is observe your body. So things like water retention, bloating, injuries, general fatigue, that should tell you that you're not recovering very well. Okay, so just be aware that those are things that are, so water retention is inflammation, bloating is inflammation of the gut, injuries, if you're getting regular injuries or old injuries are coming back, that's joint inflammation. So all of these things should be an indication that actually I need to address how I'm recovering, because I'm not recovering well enough for my body to regenerate itself. If you get home and you're in a bit of state of like stress or worry, that's slightly different. So it's called sleep anxiety, and we really need to address that because it can severely impair your recovery. So my 2 tips on this: we've got the immediate tip, and then we've got the long-term tip. So the immediate tip is to try something like body scanning. So body scanning is a meditation technique. It was actually made popular by the American Marines back in the 90s as a way to put them to sleep when they're at war. And the way they do it is they think about the parts of their body where there's particular connections to something called your sympathetic nervous system. So that's the part of our fight or flight system. And there's a nerve called our phrenic nerve that attaches to our tongue and our eyes. So the first part of your body that you think about when you want to do a body scan, so if you're lying down in your bed, relaxing your body, the first thing you think about is your eyes and your tongue. So what should happen is your eyelids just gently fall. You relax your eyes so you're not bug-eyed, all right, or in a frenzy or anxious. Relax your eyes, relax your tongue. Your tongue should not be in the roof of your mouth. It should sit to the bottom of your mouth, and your saliva ducts should kick off. When your saliva ducts kick off, it means you're in parasympathetic. When you have a dry tongue, it means you're sympathetic. So there's the first indication. Then what you do is you make your way down your body, relaxing your chest, relaxing your arms, feeling like they're going to sink into the body, sink into your bed. Relax your legs, your quads, your feet. Think about everything getting long and light. So that's a bit of a body scan technique where you just try to relax yourself. That's something you can do in the moment. However, we actually have to address the worry. So worry, being a professional worrier, is a process called paired association. So paired association, when you're worrying every time you lie down at night, means you've connected worry to lying down in bed.
That's sort of like anxiety of like you've got to be doing stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've because worry is not a bad thing. Worry and anxiety is an appropriate response from your brain to tell you there's an underlying condition or problem. So worry is, we're supposed to worry, but we're supposed to do something about that worry, and doing it when you lie down in bed at night is not the appropriate time, right? So what we need to do is uncouple the worry from bedtime. So when you lie down in bed, if you start to feel yourself traveling into those wheels spinning, get up, get out of your bedroom. Do not appear that association to lying down in bed and worry. So get up, do something about it. What are you going to do about it? You're going to write it down. What are the things that are spinning your wheels? Bring them out of your head into reality. And then write an action plan around the smallest possible thing you could do to start making progress around that thing that you're worrying about, whether it's finances, relationships, blah, blah, blah. All right, so we need to start getting, this is the long-term solution to worry. So the tips there are, you have to disassociate worry from lying in your bed, because you've now chosen to do that, and you've trained it, right? It's behavior. You've heard of Pavlov's dog? So Pavlov's dog, it was a psychologist that trained his dog to salivate simply by blowing a whistle. So the dog knew it was dinner time because he trained it that dinner time was when the whistle blows. Not that there was food present, but when the whistle blows. And so worry is the same thing. Like I said, worry is not a bad thing. Bring the worry into the day. So when you want to worry, given that you are a professional worrier, put those, whatever it is that you're thinking about, put it at the middle of the day. So there is an appropriate time to do it, and it's during the day, not at night. And then address or break the pattern, uncouple it by getting up when you start to feel the wheels spinning, and start to do something about it by journaling and taking action steps. And so that's my tips for overcoming sleep anxiety or sleep worry.
Yeah, I guess
I feel like that's how I write my to-do list.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Anxiety is just it's a fear of the future, right? So depression is if we put this simply, this comes from Mike, is the contemplating something from the past, and anxiety is something you're fearing in the future. That's the most simplistic explanation of those two things. So anxiety serves you. There's a purpose to it. It's just that we haven't addressed it, and so that's when it becomes a bit of an issue. And the fact that you're putting it at nighttime or when your bedtime is the major issue, specifically around recovering from or having a proper sleep.
I guess that's one of the things in hospitality where like you work constantly on your feet, you're always moving, your mind's always going, that you kind of just like, you're always told to like put things in the back of your head or like leave your stuff at the door. When this is why like a lot of people, when they get home, they're like, I didn't sleep until 6 o'clock in the morning because I was thinking about this. It's like, all right, well, we need to try and get into this habit of like, all right, let's try and figure something out.
Yeah, and this is the whole mindfulness piece, right? So that's what mindfulness is about. It's about bringing yourself into the present. You've got your own challenges and problems in your life. Don't wait to address them when you want to go lie down in bed. You address them at an appropriate time, post shift, before you leave to go home. Because remember, your recovery, your sanctuary, your home is where you go to recover, right? Restore yourself. Yeah. So don't take your negative behaviors. Well, they're not negative behaviors. Don't take behaviors that are going to interfere with that home. Make your home your sanctuary, man. Make it the place where you go to restore yourself.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I believe collectively we've all been in this industry now for quite some time, and we've all had the conversations with people, whether they're within this industry or not. And we often talk about the negatives of working in hospitality, but there's actually like a lot of positives too. What do you see as like a biggest pro health-wise that maybe we don't think about working in hospitality?
Yeah, so the big things for me coming from the corporate space was that hospitality people move a lot. So corporate struggle with sedentariness a lot. That's one of the major issues with working at a desk for a living. But with hospo, they get to move about a lot more. So that's quite positive. I had some of the guys tell me they were doing 25, 30,000 steps a day when they put a step counter on it. And I'm like, that's like 3 times, 4 times more than most people. So that's not a bad thing. That can be only positive. Some groups get to work outdoors as well, which again is only a positive thing. It's not the case in all scenarios, but for a lot of restaurant staff, not always with the bar staff and chefs, but the restaurant staff get to move around outdoors a lot. There's a inclusiveness. Now, there's 2 sides to this, but I found that when I was working with the groups that there is this general sense that we're in this together. Specifically with like the running club, for example, where they wanted to include as many people as possible, and they wanted to bring people along. And I found that really enlightening for one, and just this element of humanity to hospitality that I never envisaged was there. They're a real stick together kind of group, which is awesome, right? Because I think in life sometimes that doesn't happen as much anymore. I think we're all busier than we've ever been, and I don't know if we're doing that well at keeping people included. But I felt like hospitality, the ones I worked with, were doing that really, really well. And the attitude, man, this is the most impressive thing. I had people coming from a 4 o'clock in the morning finish to a 9 o'clock running club or 9:30 running club, literally getting and commuting. So they had to come from like 30, 40 minutes away to a location where we were running. And I'm thinking of one guy in particular who was just an absolute rock star, Igor, who just showed up week in, week out, showed up. And I was just so impressed, man. I used to charge people $100 an hour at the end of my PT career for personal training sessions, and they'd just blow it. They'd sometimes not show up. Jesus. Igor, every single time, but that was the case for many of them, man. There is this good attitude amongst this get it done attitude, which sometimes can have a negative connotation, like if it's kind of A-type personality, push it, that stoicism, just do 70-hour weeks. I think it's the same attitude. They use that same attitude. So see previous
suckers for punishment.
Yeah, man. See previous answer for solution.
Take that energy and put it into well-being.
Yeah, and they did though. They did.
Yeah, totally.
Those are the kind of the big things that I took away. Yeah, man, I was actually really impressed. That's cool when you're a facilitator of health and well-being, or any facilitator, and you get people like that coming along and giving you their energy, giving you their all. That's what makes us want to show up. That's the rewarding part for us.
Totally.
It sucks when you go to a workshop or a seminar, maybe the group haven't been prepared that well and they're not really that into it. They're kind of there not because of choice. Because these guys are just showing up, man.
Yeah, I guess it's that sort of, and you would have seen it as well throughout your personal training and like sports education career, where hospitality has those sort of elements about being a team aspect and, pulling everyone together, and we're all in this together, which is really, really reassuring to see. There's definitely a lot of challenges with hospitality. What's been the most challenging side of working with hospitality that you've had so far?
Yeah, those work schedules, on one side, I was really impressed with, their commitment, but on the other side, I also understand what it takes. You can't sustain that. It's not sustainable. So something has to give. And unfortunately for a lot of them, it was because of their work schedules and their time commitments, it was that ability to sustain the run club, say, post, or a nutrition program post, or even just social contact time, like if you're sleeping during the day, being able to see people it gets tough if they're not on the same work schedule as you. So that can be the tough part about it. The industry, I call it indoctrination, where, you know, I'm in hospo, so therefore I drink and therefore I stay out late, and that kind of martyrdom. We didn't encounter that so much, but I do understand that as a part of the industry culture. And then obviously alcohol, I think just in general, it's tough to mitigate and manage the alcohol consumption on a weekly basis, given it's one of the key tools of the industry, that and food. So they're not things that can't be overcome, but they are definitely challenges.
That's fair.
Just need more opportunities for people to get involved in workshops and start running their own run clubs and things to start battling that. Because once you get it going, people are keen.
Yeah, for sure. Far out. That's so enlightening. I love that. I'm going to jump on some little questions for you, my bro. So I guess probably this is more on like a well-being and basic, probably more about your journey as such anyway. We all kind of know around about what we should probably do to be more healthy, but on the whole, we probably need a little bit more guidance from people like yourself. Now, you personally are so heavily dedicated to what you do. You're extremely busy, juggle your own company, family. Obviously, then at some point you've got to look after yourself. Where does that motivation and dedication come from?
Yeah, okay, so well, I guess I've got some principles that I try to live my life by, and I'm not perfect and I don't live by them all the time, but I always try to come back to something. So my principles, and again, it comes back to that original story of when I joined the army. So integrity, discipline, self-respect. So those are my three principles that I always come back to. And if I am getting wayward in any of those things, then that's a chance for me to reset and go again.
Yeah.
And so that's in everything I do. And my life's, like I said, in the old days, if you'd asked me about health, I would have said eat, sleep, train, repeat. But these days, it's a lot different, right? Fatherhood changes things. I'm trying to push myself out there. I'm doing things like this where I'm going into environments that I'm not comfortable with. Hospitality is not my bag. It's not my thing. But I do it to challenge myself. And can I make an impact in here? And can I instill some of these principles that have helped me with others?
Yeah, I like the fact that you've kept like a simple set of rules that you can keep checking in on. I think it's like, if you keep it as simple as possible, it's really easy to keep an eye on it. And like you said, none of us are perfect. But you know, if you keep trying or you keep checking in on what you're doing, I think it's a really good step in the right direction. How do you keep yourself accountable? It's probably a really good question off the back of that.
Yeah, so I did this for years, but I actually didn't have a physical thing that I kind of came back to, but now I do, which is a scoreboard. So I have a scoreboard, and my scoreboard essentially has my daily and weekly wants. Now my needs are, I have to go to work, right? I need to work. I need to make money. I need to look after my kids, prepare them breakfast. There's all these needs that you have to do. So they just go into the needs file. You can't do anything about them. My weekly wants. So my wants are my exercise, my nutrition, my sleep quality, my social interactions. I've got a group of friends I've trained with for 15 years that keep me accountable. So we have they set up these challenges, and every week, you know, we just got to hit 5 training sessions a week. And so I hold myself accountable to that scoreboard on a weekly basis and a daily basis, and and the group holds me responsible as well. And this is a really important thing. One thing I learned about genetics, if I throw this in there, is that you are the product of your environment, and that has more meaning than you will ever know. So the way human genetics works is the environmental influence on your gene expression has a way bigger impact than you will ever understand. And it will literally predetermine your health outcomes for the rest of your life. There's a really cool TED talk that I shared with Laurie, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, that looked at what are the things that will extend your lifespan. And the number one thing on that list was social interaction. So the quality of the social interactions you have on a daily basis. So be careful who you put your energy and time into.
I've never really thought about it like that. It's really cool that your accountability essentially comes from a social aspect. I guess that's quite similar to, I probably liken it to the run club, and the fact that there's like this weird underlying accountability to be there and be part of it, and you know, help your peers out, but also push yourself to a certain degree while still being comfortable and happy.
Yep, 100%.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Couple of bits from me still. Motivation wise, do you have any little hacks for us to kind of make sure your well-being journey is tight? Is there any nice little ways to start, or any bits that we should definitely throw in there?
Yeah, momentum. So life's all about momentum, right? So if you can create that snowball effect with some positive habits. So there's a cool book. I know we're going to talk about some recommendations, but Atomic Habits by James Clear is a excellent book that everyone should read if you want to understand how to motivate yourself and create momentum and build towards achieving something. That's the book to read, man. And essentially what it says is that you are the sum of your habits, but it's the small, tiny habits that you do on a daily basis that have the biggest impact. And often when we want to start something, specifically when we want to start something, we think about the end goal and it kind of overwhelms us. Like, I want to lose 10 kilos, or I want to run a marathon, or I want to do this, I want to do that. And that's just all consuming, because if you're doing nothing and you run around 42 Ks, there's a big gap between being able to complete something like that.
Bigger, it's getting bigger.
Yeah, exactly. So his perspective is that it's not that you want to run a marathon, it's that you want to become a runner. And so you need to adopt the habits of a runner. And one of those habits of becoming a runner, as an example, is to make sure your shoes are packed and you're ready to get up at 6 a.m. for your first run in the morning, or whenever your run is. And it's those habits that make the biggest impact. And if you see, bub, if you accrue those habits over time, then you'll build momentum, and all of a sudden you'll be that marathon runner that you want to be. He's got 3 other rules that I just want to bring up. So small achievements often is the rule we just talked about. The reset rule. Now, this is one of the most important rules. You are going to stuff up. You're going to misfire. And so never misfire 2 days in a row is his other golden rule. So say, for example, if you're on a nutrition drive and you put 7 days together, you're feeling pretty good, and you have a blowout in the weekend, don't let that blowout follow into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and just give up the ghost. So Monday, reset, go again. And if you can do that across a calendar year over 12 months, you'll be sitting close to 80-20, and you'll get 80% yield out of your results. And the last one, and this is akin to what we were talking about earlier from the social perspective, hang out with like-minded people like Laurie, and mirror successful people. So there's people out there that have done what you're trying to do. You're not the first person. Find out what they did and mirror what they've done. All right, so just mirror successful people. It's actually a tip from Tony Robbins as well. So those 3 things: small achievements often, reset rule, and mirroring successful people will help you build momentum and obviously drive motivation. And then the next thing, the internal external motivation piece. Should we climb into that?
Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about that? Yeah, I mean, I've delved a small amount into it, but Laurie's talked to me a little bit more. I guess she's probably more qualified to talk about it. But yeah, if you can give us some insight, that'd be awesome.
Okay, so motivation. I'm fascinated by motivation. I'm fascinated by energy. I think we're all looking for the currency of energy, right? And if we can maintain our energy throughout our lives, we are going to have a pretty enriched life. So I've done heaps of research on this. And so dopamine is what we're talking about. We want dopamine. Dopamine is the motivation hormone. And the way dopamine works is it's not the achievement of something, it's the drive towards something. And that's an important distinction, right? So it's not achieving something every day, it's moving towards something that creates dopamine. That's what dopamine, how it's generated inside our brain. And so all you need to be doing is moving forward. And that's the momentum piece, right? If we're moving forward towards something, not the fact we've achieved it, we just feel like we're moving forward. Those small little habits will make the biggest difference. There's things that you need to have in your diet to be able to produce dopamine. So dopamine is produced from a precursor called L-tyrosine. L-tyrosine comes from meat. It comes from velvet beans. It comes from probiotics. It comes from, and it gets impaired by saturated fats. So you need to have a reasonably strong diet around protein. Genetically, people are wired differently. So you have externally driven people and internally driven people. Externally driven people need positive affirmation. They need feedback, need peers to reaffirm that what they're doing is beneficial to the group. So their motivation doesn't come within, it comes from with us. So they're always looking to be a part of something where they're collectively moving forward. And they'll always vote for Labour. Right, because that's the kind of people they are. All right. And then national voters are internally driven. It's very interesting when you get to the political views of people.
Hilarious.
It's so true. Yeah, so internally driven people need a personal goal. They need clarity and the why behind why they're doing what they're doing. And then that's when they'll act on something. So they need a clear clarity, a why, and a goal before they'll jump apart. And it doesn't mean an internally and externally person can't work together. It just means one person only cares about themselves and the other person cares about everyone else, which is me and Laurie.
It actually is. I'm definitely.
Laurie's the collectivist, right? She wants to help everyone. And I'm the goal-orientated person thinking, okay, so what's the purpose behind this, and why will it make a difference and make an impact, right? So there you go.
Yeah, and I've used that now, like now understanding that, I'm like, okay, well, I work better with other people. So now with anything I want to do, fitness or goal-wise, I'm like, okay, who am I going to do this with? And because I just enjoy the social aspect as well. And yeah, so I can hold myself way more accountable if I've got a group that I'm working with towards something.
Mate, I've noticed this. You're a very details oriented person. You're very good, by the way, at it. But when it comes to collective activities, you'll throw that out the window to be a part of something, and it's so funny to watch. You don't do that, and what I've observed, you don't do that in any other part of your life, but when it comes to that, you will shut down that part of your brain and just go with the team, which is it's really, really fascinating. That gene expression, guys, that's what it is. That's what it does.
Yeah.
I feel like that might somehow be bred, even if you are someone who has internal motivation. I feel like that might also be like rebred in hospitality. So I think that's something that kind of you end up somehow retraining yourself into that, because I'd probably put myself in the same, but also really cool in the fact that it's nice if you work along somebody who does have that internal motivation, because you cover both sides and there's so much it's really good to fact check, I guess. Probably the instance I would say is when I've made drinks or I put things together, somebody with a completely different mindset where we're talking about cogs and that kind of thing versus a creative, excited, wow, this is amazing motivation is like completely different.
That's how we got here, man. This is society, right? This is the strength of the human race. When you put us all together, we've all got our own strengths, and those strengths express themselves, you get a pretty strong team.
Awesome. Wicked. Well, last one from me. Great books, podcasts, documentaries, the recommendations that we need to see, listen to, or read.
Recommendations. So the first book I ever picked up when I started in the fitness industry was called Eat, Move, and Be Healthy by Paul Chek. And that is a holistic book. It's old, man. It's like 1997, 98. But he was way ahead of his time. He understood things that no one else understood around exercise and nutrition and health in general. That's one of my favorite books of all time to this day, hence I'm regurgitating it almost like 24 years later. Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. If you really want to understand recovery and what sleep is for and what you can use sleep for, definitely jump on that book. And one I just read this year, which we're now using as a tool at work, and this is really good for managers. It's called the 4 Disciplines of Execution. And that will give you amazing clarity, not on only how you create your own goals, but how you create team goals and what to focus on. And that's where the scoreboard idea came from, actually having a proper scoreboard around what your wants are versus what your needs are. They do a really cool thing. They talk about something called the whirlwind. And the whirlwind is what we do every day. Those are the needs. So we do that every day. And it's also almost autonomic, right? We just continue to show up. But what you really want to be doing, if you want to live a passionate life, is to have a lot of your wants taken care of. And that book helped me to bring my focus back to where it belonged.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. All right. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of our prepared questions. We did reach out to the Instagram community to see, and there was one really great question that I'm going to throw on you really quickly before we wrap up, from James Miller, who is asking about how to manage yourself when you're going through an injury, and specifically around kind of like the injury depression when you want to move but you can't. So are there any tips around staying mentally and physically in a good place when you're recovering from an injury?
Yeah, so I liken this to, I was very fortunate. I got to work with professional rugby players many years ago, and I would see this happen a lot when they finished their career. They would go through this professional sports depression where it's all laid on for you. You've got your food, you've got your exercise, everything's sweet, and now it's stopped, and now your identity becomes challenged. So it's a very similar process when you get injured. You know, you had a good run, everything is going well, and you're identified as this, and now you can't be this anymore. So you have to be prepared to make that shift mentally. So you are not that anymore, and you have to reset. So resetting your goals and starting again is critical to moving forward. And the goal should be around recovering from the injury, right? So you become very focused on the injury and what it takes to get that injury back. Because if you don't get it back, it will bother you for the rest of your life. I've seen this so many times where people get a back injury, a serious one, a neck injury, shoulder injury, and they don't do the right recovery. And then lo and behold, it nags them for the next 20 to 30 years. And I've been around long enough that I've seen people who got injured in their 20s hit their 50s, and it's become so bad they're on their fourth surgery because they didn't do the right things when they were younger, right? And to be honest, back in the 90s and 2000s, we weren't paying attention to this stuff very well in the fitness industry. So change your focus, acknowledge where you're at. And then there are things that what you're looking for is mimetic effects. So mimetic effects from things like sauna, walking, swimming, or swimming is actually like a legitimate response to or stimulus, can be good alternatives to making sure that you're keeping your circulation up, getting the exercise that you need so you don't go backwards. What absolutely kills people is the loss of physical conditioning. So when you're injured and say you've got a hand injury or an ankle injury and you can no longer stand on the foot, or you forget it's broken, just stopping altogether is the worst possible thing you can do, right? Because your body's used to those endorphins. It's used to what happens when you and your schedule, and that scheduling of your activity has a massive effect on your hormones. So when you just stop dead, it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal on your system. Your system doesn't know what's going on, right? So finding ways to still move is key, and then changing your goal focus to getting the injury back as best you can. But what tends to happen, right, is we get injured, we stop exercising, we start eating rubbish, and it just goes downhill fast, and it's brutal. Man. It's brutal.
So change the goals, set new goalposts.
Yeah.
Keep going. All right, awesome. That's good to know, because I feel like I know I've personally struggled with injury myself, and it sucks. So hopefully that answers that question. And I think that really comes to the end of our segment. So we've managed to pick your brain on quite a few different topics. If you enjoyed this, so Coach G does a lot of work with us, and he helps us with quite a few workshops. So make sure you come along to some of the events that we have, definitely in Auckland, and we're slowly starting to get interest from the rest of the country. So hopefully we can start expanding soon. But it's, as always, a pleasure to work with you. Thank you for taking some time out to do this with us. I don't know if there's any other words anyone else wants to say.
Thank you so much, man. It was really insightful. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, mate. Thanks so much. I mean, yeah, the tiny little chats that we probably had in the minutes before going to get pulverized by a run before were quite enlightening. So this was a really nice deep dive into. You'd be pleased to know that I'm still doing it to myself. So it's good.
Oh, good man. You're the quintessential hospitality person. You are that person I was talking about, right? Didn't you? You showed up like halfway through, and we were already at like some pretty hearty training, and you just punched it. So there you go. Case in point. Well done, man.
Oh.
Love it. All right. Thanks so much, G, and hope everyone enjoyed listening to this hour of very insightful chat from one of our resident health and wellbeing expert at Healthy Hospo. So thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
And see you guys later.
Thanks, G. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Bye.